Little more college football here on the Big Show. Larry, Mike, and Brad. We've talked so much about, again, 2024 being the year of the expanded playoff, and we've been musing week in, week out of what's this going to look like when they finally make the predictions. The College Football Playoff Committee, they've done it every year with the four teams. Now it's 12 teams, and so what will that look like? And guys, we got a glimpse of this, and I want to just first, before we kind of dig into it, give me your thoughts in terms of when this was announced on Tuesday night, what you thought about it.
I thought I want to be Ohio State, in the sense that, man, I think that they would have if they're the 5 seed in this bracket, they would get to play Boise State and BYU to get to semifinals. I mean, I'm not saying that those teams aren't good, but man, I would love to, with their athleticism and their speed and things, I would love to be them. But the other thing I thought, because the way it's staggered, but they're the 2 seed, then I wonder how that works. Like, I understand giving those conference things the top 4 seeds, but man, it does create a weird dynamic there when you have, teams that are ranked, 2 and 3 and that are going to be maybe not in there. And the other thing is, Alabama at 11 has the best win probably in the country, and yet at the same time, I don't think they're going to make it. They have to win out, I think, to do that. So those are my 2 thoughts right away.
Yeah, the thing I thought was most interesting was Indiana's undefeated, but their strength of schedule is so light that they're behind one-loss teams, which is not something that historically has happened.
They're in the hundreds, right? I mean, they're in like the hundreds. So
yeah,
they'll get better when they play Ohio State, I guess. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's your stakes. But I thought it was interesting. And then I didn't think Notre Dame, with the worst loss of any of the CFP teams with that NIU team, I thought at number 10, they did not really pay for a loss that, would probably be disqualifying just a year ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what is going to be a lot of fun with this, that in the past, it's only 4 teams. So it's just, okay, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah. Same 4 teams, mix them up next week, whatever the case is. But now, to your point, you get into, like you said, a team like Ohio State that I think, a little question, if you would argue right now, they are the second best team in the country. And yet the way this lays out, if Oregon is the Big Ten representative by, now all of a sudden you've got a pretty good road to the semifinal when you go through this. I guess here's a thing too with Oregon. Do you think they've got the juice to run the table right now and end up at the end of the season?
Well, I think it depends that Big Ten championship game. I think they're winning out to the Big Ten championship game. Now the question is, who are they going to play? Because if Ohio State wins out, then they would get in. But what if Ohio State would have wins over Indiana and Penn State, so they would get in as the game? And boy, that'd be a fun game to watch. But if they lose one of those games, Ohio State probably still makes it in, but one of those other teams now is in the Big Ten title game. So if they lose to, let's say they lose to Indiana, then Indiana could slide up in there.
Yeah, I think we will see Ohio State and Oregon play in that Big Ten championship game, and there's your second time this year. The other thing that I wonder is, will we see a team that goes to a championship game with either 1 loss or 2 losses, and they fall behind a team that didn't go to a championship game, thus they didn't lose? Now, again, do you want to be Ohio State, let's say, and be 12-1 and then lose to Oregon? Do you fall in the rankings behind somebody who's just has 1 loss? And I think it's going to be fascinating to see how this gets judged by the committee.
And I think that's the fun and or maddening, because there is no precedent. And as Danny Sheridan said earlier, they just make this stuff up as they go along. They can make up the rules and do it. So, I think we would agree that, look, if you're good enough to qualify for your conference championship game, is it fair to have a team that was idle that week slip ahead of you the way we saw Alabama do when Nick Saban would go on the broadcast of his SEC championship game going on, committee and would get in. To your point, is that fair? Like you said,
We'll
they
find
have, let's
out.
say, Ohio State a second loss, and they fall out mix, and yet Indiana slides in with one loss. I mean, you're exactly right. I love some of the matchups in this, like you talked about. If this plays out, and again, this is hypothetical, it's going to change several times before December. But like you said, Boise State at Ohio State, Alabama at Texas, it would be, I guess, Notre Dame at Penn State, and then Indiana at Tennessee. You talk about a real challenge, for this. And then, of course, you go on to if you have Ohio State taking on, like you said, BYU, Texas, Miami, Penn, Georgia, and then Oregon getting Tennessee, assuming there are no upsets in all this. Um, this is where I think just if hopefully everyone is a fan of this format. I think this is where it just gets so sexy. If you're a fan, that you're going to sit and watch all four of those games in round, and it is must see TV in the quarterfinals when move on, or the bowl setup as they have this laid out later on during the holidays.
No, yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, if you're a college football fan, you cannot beat what this is going to create there. The thing that's intriguing to me is how many of these teams do you think will still be in the playoff at the end? We've got these 12 teams in this first playoff. How many do you think of these 12 end up in the final playoff?
I think it's going to be pretty close. I think there may be maybe 10.
Interesting. Got some elimination games coming up.
Yeah, there are some elimination. I'd have to go look at the schedules closer. I guess we're looking like right now, if Alabama has a bad week, they could be bounced out of this.
So then Tennessee still goes to Georgia. They've still got that game coming up. That's a tough one. If whoever wins that game, obviously is in the driver's seat, but the loser, what happens then? You know what I mean? Like, there's just so many things that can happen here. It's going to be fun to kind of watch this play out.
I think Larry implied that you and I would just be sitting around all weekend watching football. Brad, I kind of a little offended that he would just assume we're going to lay down and watch football all weekend.
Well, yeah, probably.
There might be basketball.
There could be basketball on the other TV. I mean, come on, give us a break. You could. I mean, if we have college basketball, we have to watch that too. So that's why I have like picture in picture still. And
I got to give an ad to YouTube TV, because when they put the four games on and then they mix sports, you can watch like a really good college basketball game and have 3 college football games on the mix. That is just wonderful.
Oh, it's fantastic. That's what we all live for, actually, Mike. That is the most important thing, being able to watch multiple games. I've got I love my dual screens. I can put them up on the double screens. Oh, it's the way to go.
Oh, sweet.
So what are your thoughts, Mike? I'm looking at this kind of team. What team, we said Alabama maybe, but what's the other team that you think's not going to make this playoff?
As I look at the schedule, I think Alabama, I think Tennessee, because of the number of threats that are out there in the SEC, and even Texas. Really, their best victory is over a mediocre Michigan team. And there's all these tough games. Now, I think Notre Dame, if they lose another game, they would be out, but I don't think there's anybody on their schedule who can beat them, which that's the last thing Tony wanted to hear, because when I make a bold prediction like that, that team usually dies a horrible death.
Yeah, this is very, very true. Yeah, is the ACC. So what if, Tony, producer Tony Carrera makes a good point. Let's say it's Miami and SMU in the ACC title game. It looks like that's the way it could play out. Obviously, they have some games left to play for sure. But let's say it is Miami and SMU. SMU has probably moved into the top 12 at this point if they keep winning. SMU wins. Where does Miami if they lose? Because they don't have many. Miami doesn't have.
Well, that's where the fight comes down, because the SEC is going to be saying a 2 or maybe even a 3-loss SEC team is better than a 1-loss ACC team. And I would say that the SEC will even be pointing their guns at the Big Ten, saying our 3-loss SEC team is better than a 2-loss Big Ten team.
Yeah, I don't know if they can get that one in the Big Ten, but they might in the SEC. I mean, I look at Miami. Who's Miami's best win? At Cal? Oh, Louisville. At Louisville. Good win. At Louisville's a good win.
But yeah,
Anything
it's
else?
not star-studded.
No, it's not like, Ohio State beating Penn State or Oregon beating Ohio State or Alabama beating Georgia, et cetera, Georgia winning at Texas. Those are better wins. So it's very intriguing to see how this is going to play out. And I think we're just, as we go along, we'll find out what happens. But I like, who do you think if you had to seed them though, who are the top 4 teams? If you just pick the best teams without worrying about conference or whether you have to follow these things, who are your 4 best teams?
I would go with Oregon, Ohio State, Georgia, and then I've got to say, I just don't think I could put Miami there despite the fact that they're undefeated. So I just don't know at that point who I put there. I think it's the 3 dogs are the toughest ones, and the 4th one, it depends on who finishes the season the best.
So let's say this happens. So we're talking about this scenario. Alabama could be in the field and win win out and go to a 10-2. SMU then beats Miami in the playoff game, and then does SMU and Miami, then does Alabama get kicked out of this? Let's say all these teams win. Does Alabama then come out?
I doubt it with 2 losses, Larry. What do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I mean, I'm with the SEC, Big Ten and SEC. Like we talked with Danny earlier, I think they will have a shot at getting 4 teams each, especially considering, to your point, the ACC champ and the Big 12 champ may or may not have a very good resume, right? So, it may be one of those where you do have a 2-loss team out of the SEC is going to trump a 1-loss team out of the ACC. Chances are.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Totally
completely.
agree.
Yeah.
And can you imagine the anger in SEC Nation if it doesn't? Oh my goodness! That if you want the Big Ten and the SEC to put their foot down on automatic qualifiers, that would be the way to do it.
Yeah, that would do it for sure. Is I wonder about when I look at these teams. Let's talk about producer Tony Cordero's team. Notre Dame. Who's Notre Dame have left that can beat them?
Nobody.
Army at US. Do they go to USC?
But
They play is that at USC?
That is.
Hey, USC has shown that they can play teams really close games and still lose, but they haven't really shown they can beat anybody good. Isn't that what Lincoln Riley said?
And they do it well. Yeah.
They do. It's not like we're getting blown out. I mean, if that's your sales pitch to keep your job, that's not a great one.
It's
right?
like Buzz Lightyear. He's falling with style.
Yes, exactly.
And they're going to hang out of the Coliseum. USC Trojans. Hey, we're getting blown out.
But that would make the USC year if they could knock Notre Dame out of the playoff, even though they've had a horrible game, and Lincoln Riley, maybe he needs to be looking for an exit strategy as well.
Yeah, see, this is where our problem with when we start looking at these games, we start saying, who can beat Notre Dame? Well, anyone can, because Northern Illinois did.
Yeah.
Anybody left.
Army could be interesting. Army could be interesting. So, yeah.
What would happen if these colleges could start trading the coaches so that they wouldn't be like, it's like, hey, you got a coach with 90 million. We got a coach with 90 million. Neither of us is happy. Let's just switch.
What happens when we get to the college football trade deadline? We start doing that.
Right.
Again.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we're going to trade. Look, we're not
Lincoln Riley for Lane Kiffin.
Or they're trading, like Florida State's selling off their guys for a 5-star pick next year. So they can, 5-star. Yes, basically that's where we're headed, huh?
I was going to say, guys, we're laughing, but it may not be that far-fetched. We may be heading that direction. All right, we got to get a quick break. More to come after this.